we start with Walter. I don't think I need to tell anybody in this room anything about Walter's career. I think we all know that. And if you don't, I'd be happy to tell you on the side. But I did want to tell you a little bit about how I came to know Walter and my relationship with him. When I arrived here at Scripps, actually at RGPP, at the beginning of 1977. And I was staying at the Andrea Villa Motel, which was an old motel down in the shores. And I caught the bus up the hill, and when I got off the bus, the driver said, "Have a nice day." And for somebody who grew up in Sydney with double-decker buses, and the driver looking in the rearview mirror to see when you had one foot off the bus before he could accelerate, having a bus driver say, "Have a nice day," was a new world to me. So I got off the bus and I walked down the hill to IGPP, and I saw what looked like a country club sitting on a cliff overlooking the ocean. It was redwood building, floor to ceiling, glass doors around the whole building, and I thought I'd arrived in paradise. It took a while for Walter to recognize me. In those days, Walter was very well known. If he didn't remember your name, he would just say hi. So, and you knew, when you transitioned from Walter just saying hi to actually knowing your name, that you'd arrived. And so it took a while, but I have to confess I do the same thing myself now, Walter. I don't remember names. So I spent my first Thanksgiving in Walter's house, and those of you who know Walter's house know that it's quite a splendid place, and it has a very large room that can be turned into a dining room. And Walter's wife, Judy, was of the Horton family, and I didn't find out until that time that this was the same family as Edward Everett Horton. So those of you who are baby boomers like myself, who grew up on fractured fairy tales and Bullwinkle, the voice of Edward Everett Horton was known to everybody. So I thought I'd arrived in American royalty for my first Thanksgiving. Walter was at our wedding, Sabina and my wedding, in 1979 here in La Jolla. He and Judy, we had lunch at Walter's house the morning after we had gone downtown to get our American citizenship. And we walked into the house, and there at the end of the big room was this American flag covering the whole end wall. So the four of us had lunch at Walter's place that day. There was one other event that was rather special. 3 years ago, due to Mary's efforts, she managed to get an invitation from one of Scripps' donors to spend a long weekend down on the Sea of Cortez. This particular person had a ranch down there and an aircraft to get to the ranch. And Mary and Walter were generous enough to have Sabina and me take the extra seats on the plane. So we had a wonderful weekend flying down from here in a private plane to this ranch on the Sea of Cortez. The next day flying over to see the whales on the Pacific coast, and the next day going out in a small boat to look at basically the productivity of the Sea of Cortez. It's really quite remarkable, the sea life and the bird life. So there's some of the experiences I've had with Walter. And over the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've had a continuing conversation about the fine-scale structure of the ocean surface. This is some of you will know that one of the classical papers in ocean remote sensing is by Chip Cox and Walter in 1954, where they got a B-17 bomber from one of the generals and managed to fly in Hawaiian waters measuring sun glitter from the aircraft. And this is a way of measuring the slope of the ocean surface, the fine-scale slope. And this has become, you know, one of the most quoted papers in ocean remote sensing. And it's something that Walter is still working on today, quite vigorously, and really coming up with some, I think, original ideas on, you know, what might underlie the statistics of the fine-scale structure of the ocean surface. So that's a very brief history of my relationship with Walter. And Walter, I put myself in your hands.
Well, thank you, Ken. I would like to thank people who came here from all over the place to Scripps to celebrate this special occasion. Thank you for coming and welcome to the Scripps Institution. I've had 3 heroes throughout my long career. My first hero was Harold Swarup, my teacher, who spent 7 years aboard the Munk with Amundsen exploring the Arctic. He actually was supposed to be only gone 3 years and got frozen in and didn't get home for 7 years. Wonderful teacher, wonderful man. My second hero is Roger Revell, who changed the Scripps Institution from a marine station, marine biological station, to an institute that was studying the planet Earth. Physics, the chemistry, the geophysics, everything else. Wonderful man who never spent much attention on trivialities, but had great ideas and carried them through. And my third hero is a bit of a surprise, but it's been my hero ever since I met him in Cambridge at my first sabbatical, and I think it was in 1955, G.I. Taylor. And I can pay no greater compliment to Ken Melville to say that he is very reminding to me in his career and in his style to G.I. Taylor. Have any of you met G.I. Taylor as I did, or are you all too young? Is anybody here recall? I think G.I. Taylor had 2 main things about his research. One is he picked first-order problems. He picked first-order problems. The second is he attacked them in the laboratory with excellent, wonderful, but simple laboratory experiments. And he attacked them in the field with whatever instrumental and technical means were available at that time. And as they became more sophisticated, he used them all. The mathematics of it underlying his experiments and his work were in some sense trivial, but the underlying physics was profound. And after my 3 years in Cambridge University, I still think of G.I. Taylor as a giant, and I can pay no better compliment to Ken today to say that his style, in many ways, is remindful of what G.I. Taylor did. Can I have the first slide there? I think this was taken, and I have to ask Ken about it, was taken at the end of your BS degrees in Australia, before you went to to Europe, to Southampton, to study for your PhD degrees. And there in Southampton, you worked mostly on turbulent jets and on nonlinear problems. You met Lighthill, one of the great men of our generations, with him, and I think you met Wally Hayes, who was a classmate of mine. Is that correct?
I was reading his work.
You were reading his work at the time, and you mentioned him. Could I have the next slide, please? This picture was taken at the time of your PhD work, was it correct?
This was Scripps.
Oh, that was a little bit later when you came to La Jolla. I see. I thought it was taken possibly in so this was the first picture I have of Sabina and Ken. And what it says here, in 1977 in La Jolla. Next slide, please, is their marriage in, that was already mentioned in the date here, the wedding in what was the date of the wedding? 1977.
79.
79. And I'm pleased to say many of you were at our house last night and saw the little theater. They were married at the stage. I couldn't find any picture of all of us, but here is a picture of the Melvilles on the left and of Walter and Judith on the right. It was a wonderful occasion. From there you went to have a Guggenheim in Grenoble, I think, and then on you worked with Fedorov and Fabrice and others who are here today. And I have slides that show you a little bit later, I hope, with children present now. This one taken at the sabbatical in France in 1987. And another one with your young family. Next slide, please. Taken in the 1980s. Oh no, I'm losing one, I guess. You've seen that before earlier today. Fabrice showed that at Kent's laboratory at MIT in the late 80s. Next slide, please. And you've seen that too, so I will continue to the next slide. And here's the one I had in mind, taken a little bit later, summer 88 in Salma. And the next slide, please. And that is much later, also with his family, taken in Boston in 91. And finally, the next slide, please. You've seen that before. Hunting in the can. Or is the can hunting on me? And the next slide, please. Shows him with his family, now much older, getting their age. You saw some of them last night at our house. And the next slide, please. His son's graduation from high school, 2001. And finally, his family picture. So that is a suitable introduction to today's festivities, and finally got a picture taken in 1980 of Sabina and Ken, I like so much. And you're going a little fast, Mary. Nico, put my final slide off, please. Almost by that. I want to say a few things about Ken's work. It has been focused on wave breaking, and he has worked on that profound and difficult problem in many different ways, and as you see, reminding me of G.I. Taylor's work. First of all, in a series of laboratory experiments which have extended over his entire career, and then using very simple scaling arguments to go to field measurements where, just like GI, he worked from all sorts of platforms, flip, aeroplanes, ships, using the latest available equipment as it was being developed by the science community to work on this basic problem. Then did some mixed layer modeling and extended his work to air entrainments and acoustics. But my similarity to G.I. Taylor is quite apparent when you look at G.I. Taylor's career. He would follow all of these methodologies using very little complicated mathematical theory, but profound physical principles in his work. Ken has worked on other problems, related problems, the Lagniappe circulation, the gravity capillary wave interaction. Oh, did it go out? It's okay, no problem. Which is, I will leave this slide for the last slide. What did I do to cut it off?
Oh, it just bumps here. It's no big deal.
The gravity capillary interaction, which happens to be a very great interest to me at this time, and other nonlinear effects. But I want to emphasize one more characteristics of Ken's career, his unique relationship to his students. I'm very impressed in learning about them and getting to know some of his students. They start out in the usual way with Ken passing on to his students some of his knowledge, his experimental skills, his style of doing research. A couple of years later, the students have become partners in the enterprise of research, equal partners in some ways, to learning something about the work that's going on. And I suspect some years later, like today, in many ways they know more than Ken does in those subjects, but they're still partners, still working together, still appreciating each other. And I think that characteristic of going with your students, working with them, learning from them as after they learn from you, has been beautifully exemplified in Ken's career. It's a very, very important aspect. And is partly responsible for why we are here today, I think. So thank you for all of that. I have one more slide and a birthday present to you. Where's the birthday? And I have to explain that slide. explain the site. In the back, you feel the proprietor of a nail shop here at La Jolla. Her name is H-A, and the H is silent. And in front is Ken having his toenails and fingernails done. In the back is Mary and Walter having his toenails cut. I must confess, I never thought in my life I would go to a shop to have my toenails cut. But Mary was so impressed with Ken's enjoying this activity. When I go there, I get sent there every 2 weeks. So, happy birthday, Ken.